Okay, today we'll take up a new area of literary criticism, that is new criticism. You know, literary criticism evolved, as we have already discussed, with the theory of mimesis from Plato, and it had its growth forward with Aristotle taking it forward, carrying out the legacy. So, after that, emerged historical and biographical criticism. As per historical and biographical criticism, what people used to do, people used to, you know, talk about or look into the biographical aspect of the writer. While studying T.S. Eliot or John Milton or William Wordsworth, they have to first study the biography of the poet, where he was born, when he was born, who was his father, how did he join the school, what is his educational qualification, etc., etc. And they were studying also the historical background of the writer, from what kind of background the writer has come. So, after this historical and biographical criticism continued for some years, a new theory was evolved by three very renowned critics. Those critics are T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, and F.R. Lewis. Other critics joined them later, but first of all, to begin with, in the middle part of 19th century, new criticism evolved. And the pioneers of new criticism are T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, F.R. Lewis, Cleanth Brooks, W.K. Wimsatt, John Crow Ransom, etc. These are the people, the six persons. But the first three persons, like T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, and F.R. Lewis, they are the real, pioneers of new criticism. The concept was, coined by them. The concept was formed by them. New criticism was conceptualized by them, and other people joined the fray. Other people like Cleanth Brooks, John Crow Ransom, W.K. Wimsatt, etc. So, what does new criticism discuss? New criticism started in the early part of 20th century. In the early part of 20th century, and this is a movement which formed a theory, constituted a literary theory that emphasized on the close reading of the text. Previously, what happened? I have explained to you how prior to new criticism there was biographical and historical criticism. When biographical and historical criticism as a theory was prevalent at that time, readers and critics, they used to look into the historical and biographical perspective of the writers. But after the introduction of new criticism, they never needed to consult the historical and biographical background. Rather, they wanted to concentrate, to focus on the text itself, the literary work itself. Say, for example, they are going to study The Westland, written by T.S. Eliot. They need not talk about the lifestyle, life history of T.S. Eliot. They need not go through the historical background of T.S. Eliot. What they used to do is that they used to look into the different aspects of the text, the image of the text, the structure of the text, the metaphor of the text, the simile used in the text, the symbolism used in the text. So they wanted to concentrate on the content and form of the text. Instead of bothering about the historical aspect of the text or historical aspect of the writer, the historical background of the text, biographical aspect of the writer, they wanted to concentrate on the thematic pattern and the technical pattern of the text. So it is said a close reading of the text. So these pioneers, the leaders, the proponents, the propounders of new criticism are T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, and F.R. Levish. They called it new criticism, and this is a movement which started in the early part of 20th century, and it emphasized on the close reading of the text. These new critics, they maintained that text has an autonomy, text has a independence, text has a kind of freedom which is inviolable, and the autonomy of the text should never be violated. Autonomy should always be there, and the reader or the critic should go through the text very minutely. He should not only find out the meaning of the lines, he should also find out the figures of speech, the images, the metaphors, the objective correlatives, the similes, symbolism used in the text. Because literature or the writer doesn't express his emotion directly. He always makes use of what? Objective correlative. I have already explained to you what is objective correlative. Objective correlative is a set of objects or a chain of events which the writer uses to express the emotion, and this serves as a formula to that emotion. So Eliot always emphasized that there should be objective correlative, and there should be images through which the poet or the writer should express his emotion. Now, Eliot, was a renowned modern poet, and he has written two wonderful, critical essays. One is Tradition and Individual Talent, which was written in 1919, in which he has focused not only on the talent of the writer, but he has also highlighted how the tradition contributes in a big way to formulate the talent, constitute, build up the talent of a writer. Then he has written the function of criticism. What should be the function of criticism? How does criticism function? And what is the role of criticism? He says criticism has an autonomy, and the form and structure should be taken into consideration while studying a text. And he also spoke about the impersonality theory of poetry. Because remember, I had already explained to you how T.S. Eliot has defined poetry. Once again, I am reminding you. Eliot said, poetry is not the turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion. It is not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality. Eliot said, the poet should be impersonal, objective, dispassionate in his poetry. He should never mention his own personal feelings. He should never talk about his own personal, approaches, attitudes, choices, likes, dislikes in his poetry. Rather, he should choose such a subject matter which caters to the need of the entire world. In other words, the theme should be universal instead of being personal. He should never talk about his personal choices. He should talk about certain things which have universal relevance, which are not only applicable to him, but also they are applicable to other people living in the world during that period of time. So, according to him, the choice of the theme should be, universal instead of being personal. And he also said that it is not the expression of emotion, but it is an escape from emotion. So, as you know, there are two types of poetry. One is subjective poetry, and the other is objective poetry. So, Eliot talks about objective poetry. Objective poetry is that poetry which doesn't relate to the choice of the writer or the personal likes and dislikes of the writer. Rather, the writer talks something which has universal relevance. And at the same time, he also talks about the poetry which should never deal with emotion, but it should escape the emotion. If it escapes the emotion, it will highlight or it will focus on intellectual things. It will focus on realistic things because emotion relates to imaginative things. Emotion relates to elements of fantasy, unreality, surrealism. But intellect or intellectual expression refers to something realistic, something real, and something of great significance to the people who are living in the present time. So he talked about the impersonality theory of poetry. He made use of objective correlative, and he also talked about tradition, as I told you, in his essay, path breaking essay, groundbreaking essay, he, tradition and individual talent. He said, individual talent can only flourish.
Bye bye.
Sorry, somebody said something? Okay. He said that tradition helps a lot in the growth of a poet. The poet's talent, the poet's worth, the poet's originality can only prosper if he relies on the tradition. In other words, a poet should refer to the creations in the past, the monumental creations, monumental literary achievements of the past. He should go through all those, good works and derive inspiration from those works so that his knowledge, the spectrum of his knowledge will enhance, his vision will enhance, and he will enrich his experience with new things, for which his writing will be very sharp, his writing will be very much appreciated by other people. So he said that tradition plays a paramount role in the process of creative writing. If you want to be a creative writer, you need to fall back on the tradition. You need to adhere to the tradition. You need to read a lot of the writers who have preceded you. In other words, your predecessors you must read. For example, you are writing in the modern age, you should read Milton, you should read Chaucer, you should read Shakespeare, You should read Wordsworth. You should read John Donne. Then only you will be in a position to enrich your experience, to widen your vision, your literary talent, and poetic vision. So he talked about tradition, and T.S. Eliot also talked about the autonomy of the text. He insisted that the form, structure, and impersonality fed directly into the autonomy of the text. The autonomy of the text should never be violated. One should always be very careful to ensure that the autonomy of the text is ensured. The autonomy is very important according to T.S. Eliot. Now, there was another critic named I.A. Richards, who was born in 1893 and died in 1979. So he made a contribution, and he is considered to be the father of practical criticism. And he has written two wonderful books, very famous, noted books. One book is Principles of Literary Criticism, and the second book is Practical Criticism. Principles of Literary Criticism was brought out in 1924, and Practical Criticism book was brought out in 1929. Richards, like T.S. Eliot, also advocated that there should be close analysis of the text. Any text you are going through, any piece of poem you are going through, any piece of novel, any piece of drama you are going through, any piece of story or essay or article, whatever you are reading, you should make a close, minute textual study. And while making that minute textual study, you should pay attention to words, syntax, imagery, rhythm, etc. What is syntax? Syntax is arrangement of words in a particular sentence. Arrangement of words. In English, you know the pattern of sentence is first is subject, then
Yes,
is
sir.
verb, then is object.
Yes, sir.
So the syntax should be taken into consideration. Rhythm should be taken into consideration. Rhyme scheme should be taken into consideration if it is poetry. And along with that, it should be noted that words are properly used and images are able to deliver the goods or give you the meaning. So syntax, words, imagery, simile, metaphor, symbolism, rhythm, style, all those things are to be scrutinized, analyzed. Then he also developed a method of giving students without titles and authors' names to judge purely by language. He introduced practical criticism. What is practical criticism? You have to scan a poem. Scansion. You have to make a scansion. One poem is given to you. The name of the poem is not given. The title of the poem, I mean, the name of the poet is not given. The title of the poem is not given. But you will be asked to make the practical criticism of the poem. What do you find out in practical criticism? You will find out the meaning, the allegorical meaning, the direct meaning as well as the indirect meaning, significance of the images, significance of the objective correlatives, pattern of syntax, pattern of rhythm, and all those things you have to bring into attention. Then he stressed, I.A. Richards put emphasis on the psychological effects of poetry, and he said, meaning is constructed through multiple contexts. He said, the meaning doesn't come as such.
Sir, please remove it.
CTF, your mic
City of
is on.
Cyber is here again. Instead,
Sir, please remove
What,
it.
what is the
CTS का अगर हाथ से बोलो.
CTF? Hello, CTF.
City of Cyber, please don't interrupt. Hello.
CTF. CTF, please complete all your bugs.
Please, sir.
Hello. Sir.
Just a minute, just a minute.
Okay.
ନମସ୍କାର ତପନ ବାବୁ ସେ ତ co-host କଲେ କାଇଁ ହଉନି ତ ଲେଖୁଛି you can't remove the participant, you can't mute the participant ଏସବୁ ଲେଖୁଛି ହଁ ପରା ମୁଁ ତ ସେୟା ଆଶ୍ଚର୍ଯ୍ୟ ହେଲି ହଁ ଦେଖିଲେ ସିଟିଏଫ୍ ସାଇବର ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି ତାକୁ ମ୍ୟୁଟ୍ କରିଦେଲେ ସିଟିଏଫ୍ ସାଇବର ହଁ yeah so Richards talked about tone. He talked about balance of meaning. He said how meaning is constructed through multiple contexts. In poetry, certain words are used, and externally you find one meaning emerges, but when you analyze, you find a different meaning is emerging internally, and that is through the use of objective correlative. So, from the tone, you have to find out the context in which it is used. How meaning is constructed through multiple contexts. And you don't have to rely on the biography or history. So, the core principle of neo-criticism is not to rely on the biography or history of the author. So, I. Richards said कि if you want to find out the real meaning of the poetry, you have to depend on the tone in what context it is used. So he also said he, in his principles of literary criticism, he said he, how literature affects the readers emotionally, intellectually, and aesthetically. So, in the principles of literary criticism, he mentioned that literature affects the reader not only emotionally but also aesthetically as well as intellectually.
Yes. Hmm.
Then he said that there should be a kind of study and interpretation of the text without any external aids, without giving the name of the author, without giving the name of the poem. The reader or the critic has to make the examination, close examination of the poetry through different aspects like the structure, the syntax, the rhyme scheme, the image, the allegory, etc. Then he said that the meaning of the meaning should be studied. What is meaning of the meaning? Means the semantic aspect. Syntax is the structural aspect. Arrangement of words in a sentence is called syntax, and semantics is the meaning of the words in the poetry or in any literary work. So the syntax should be studied properly, meaning should come out properly, and it should be studied how the language is sufficient or adequate to study the syntax. Then he talked about close reading. He said that the reader should be in a position to make a close reading of the text, for which he suggested that criticism begins with the words on the page. And on the page, from the words, what do you study? You study sound, rhythm, syntax, tone, and imagery. Of course, context. So whatever words are used by the poet, you can't just take them at external surface. You have to find out what is the tone of the word, what kind of sound is being produced, what is the intonation, what type of rhythm is used here, what is the rhyme scheme, and how is the pattern of the syntax, what kind of imagery is used here, and what is the tone. So all these aspects are to be taken into consideration while making close reading of the text. That's what I.A. Richards maintained.
Yes, sir.
I.A. Richards also said the reader should avoid over dependence on historical background or biography of the writer. Then he suggested that in any poem, you have to find out 4 aspects of the poem, or you have to study, examine, scrutinize, analyze, evaluate 4 aspects of the poem. What are the 4 aspects? First is sense, second is feeling, third is tone, fourth is intention. Sense, feeling, tone, intention. Remember, I.A. Richards said that while making close reading of the text, close reading of a poem, a reader or critic should analyze the sense of the words used or direct meaning, what meaning is being conveyed, then feeling, what kind of emotional degree is expressed, what type of emotional tone is expressed, then tone, relation of the writer to the reader, then intention, what is the intention of the writer, why does he write it, what is his objective, what is the objective of writing such a poem. So sense, feeling, tone, and intention should be analyzed while studying a poem. Then comes the poem is an experience. Poem should be treated by the critic as an experience which should be lived through. It is not not a very ordinary statement. Rather, it is something very serious. The reader should take the poem in a serious manner. The critic should take the poem in a serious manner, and he should, study all these aspects, and he should look upon the poem as an experience. It achieves values. Poetry achieves the values by organizing the conflicting impulses, conflicting emotions, conflicting, attitudes, Yes, Sudeep, you want to tell me something? Sudeep,
Yes, sir.
yeah, what's your problem?
Sir, if it's an experience, then there should not be any critic, right? Like it's an experience of someone.
Sorry,
If
what is?
poem,
No,
hello.
I didn't get you. You want me to explain what?
So the assessment part.
जोर से बोलो और क्लियरली बोलो.
हो अंडरवर्ल्ड में जिक्र यारां के नाम का
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, Sudeep.
Yeah. So, sir, I was asking if
हाँ
poem is an experience, then
हाँ.
actually no one should critic it, right? Because it's an experience of someone. So,
Yeah, yeah.
how can someone judge a experience of someone else, right? Like that.
No, no. Yes, you have asked a very valid question. I
जिक्र
agree with
यारां
you.
के नाम का
Look at the. Yeah. Sudeep, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
When a poet is writing something,
Yes.
he is writing from his own experience.
Hmm. Yes.
But his attitude,
Hmm.
his approach of presenting the poem should be done in such a manner so that it appears universal. It becomes relevant to you, relevant to me, relevant to others. So when others are reading it,
Hmm.
they should consider that it is also an experience for them.
Right.
Are you getting my point?
Yes. Yes.
Whatever experience the poet is going to share with us, we at this end,
Hmm.
becoming the readers, should also evaluate it, view it, कि it is as good an experience for us as it is an experience for the writer or the
Yes.
poet.
Hmm.
Got it?
Yes, sir.
So that is what Richards has been telling. That poetry should be considered as an experience. It should not be considered just a ordinary description, so that you develop a sense of seriousness to understand the different nuances of poetry.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yes. Hmm.
that
Yes.
is what he has been telling.
Yeah.
Then he says that poetry is a machine to think with. This phrase he has used. Poetry is a machine to think with. Means poetry stirs your imagination with different kinds of thoughts, because poetry has two purposes. One is to bring about enlightenment, and the other is to bring about entertainment. It will provide you delight, pleasure, joy, happiness, enjoyment. Along with that, it will provide you some kind of wisdom, some kind of awareness, some kind of truth. It will dish out to you some kind of truth. So he said it should be a machine to think with. You should consider poetry as a very serious platform which gives you certain truth, certain objectives, certain real happenings or real experiences. So you should be with the poet.
Yes, sir.
He established I.A. Richards established what? Text-centered criticism. He said, instead of whiling away your time to study about the background of the poet, the background or the history of the time, you should totally concentrate on the text, so that it will be useful for you. You will be able to know about the text. While making a close reading of the text, you will get to know the essence of the text.
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Then comes F.R. Lewis. F.R. Lewis is a new critic like that of Eliot, like that of Richards. F.R. Lewis was a very renowned critic, and he has made tremendous contribution to the theory of neo-criticism, where he had talked about the close reading of the text. He has also talked about the close reading of the text, and he has made outstanding contribution to form or to the evolution of neo-criticism, and he has brought about a pedagogical practice in English studies in Britain.
Yes.
He has three books. One is New Bearings in English Poetry, which was brought out in 1932. Second is Revaluation, which was brought out in 1936. And the third book is The Great Tradition, which was brought out in 1948. So he said there should be seriousness in literature, and literature should be viewed as a criticism of life. Remember Matthew Arnold's definition of poetry. What did Arnold say? Arnold said poetry is the criticism of life. Similarly, F.R. Lewis says there is moral seriousness in literature, and literature is a criticism of life. It is a critique of life. CRITIQUE. Then he emphasized on the same thing, close reading of the text. While reading poetry, you should analyze the syntax, the structure, the rhythm, the objective correlative, the simile, the metaphor, the images used in poetry. And he also said there should be stylistic precision to judge the greatness of poetry.
Yes.
He canonized or legalized, legitimized the tradition of English novelists like Jane Austen, Henry James, Joseph Conrad, George Eliot, etc. And he doesn't like ornamental literature. He wants literature should be based on moral seriousness. Literature should be containing moral and cultural values. He emphasized literature should have the ability to bring about reforms in society. So, I.A. Richards talked about the cultural and ethical orientation. F.R. Lewis also talked about ethical orientation, that literature should give moral and cultural value to the readers. Readers should know something, learn something from literature.
Yes, sir.
Richards talked about methodology of close reading, tone, sensibility, and other things he talked about. Then Eliot talked about theory of impersonality, objective correlative, and autonomy of the text.
Yes.
F.R. Lewis talked about canon formation, moral seriousness of literature. So, altogether, if you view these three persons, Lewis, Richards, and Eliot, three of them, they laid the intellectual and practical foundation of neo-criticism. Neo-criticism as a literary theory began to prosper along with these three persons. Later on, other people came and joined them. Who are the other people? The other people are Clint Brooks, John Crow Ransom, W.K. Wimsatt.
So can you repeat the last name?
Sorry?
The last name you said, sir?
Last one.
Yes, sir.
John Crow Ransom.
Okay.
John Crow Ransom, Clint Brooks, and W.K. Wimsatt.
Okay.
Wimsatt. These are the people. So, first of all, let us take W.K. Wimsatt. W.K. Wimsatt was born in the year 1907 and he died in 1975. He was a leading figure of neo-criticism. He is an American critic, and along with Cleance Brooks and John Crowe Ransom and Botsley, he started focusing on the theory of neo-criticism.
Okay.
There is another person also, Munro Botsley. So, W.K. Wimsatt's criticism is remembered for its insistence on objective analysis of the literary text. In one way or the other, all the neo-critics or all the pioneers of neo-criticism, they talked about one thing. What is that? Objective analysis of the text. You have to forget about the writer. Don't be subjective. Don't focus on the name of the writer, life of the writer, schooling of the writer, career of the writer, family life of the writer. Rather, you should focus on the text. So each of them, they focused on the text. Text is very important. Since text is very important, three of them, Cleance Brooks, W.K. Wimsatt, and John Crowe Ransom, they said that there should be objective analysis of the literary text. And you should never intend to find out everything from the intention of the author. You should have your own response. Because there is another critic named Roland Barthes. He brought out an article in 1967. The name of the article is The Death of the Author. In that article, The Death of the Author, he described that once the literary text is created, the author is dead. So once the text is created, the author is dead. Roland Barthes wrote in his article. So these new critics, they also believe in that there should be objective assessment of the text, and one should never be subjective. One should never intend to have any analysis of the author. W.K. Wimsatt rejected the biographical historical approach to literature. He too emphasized the close reading of the text, and he wanted to put emphasis on the verbal structure, the imagery, the symbolism, the irony, the satire, the structure, the syntax, the allegory used in the poem. And he brought out the concept of intentional fallacy. In 1946, he attacked the practice of interpreting a poem through the author's intentions. If you are trying to study the intention of the author, you are subjected to intentional fallacy. W.K. Wimsatt coined this term intentional fallacy along with Botsley. He said, a poem should never be interpreted through the intention of the author. And he further says that the poem is not what the author meant to say, but the poem is that what the words intend to say. So never depend on the intention of the author. That becomes hypothetical. How do you know what is the intention of the author? You are not aware what is the intention of the author. Rather, you should study what You should use something which is expressed through the words.
Sir, CTF cyber has shut again.
Sorry,
Sir, CTF
CTF is creating noise.
Yes, sir.
I removed him.
yes. Sir, can't we create a private link, sir? Sir, this is happening every day, sir.
I
Almost.
don't know. They don't allow. No, this will do. Now they have given me, authorized me to remove. So whosoever creates noise or any kind of disturbance, I am removing. No problem.
Okay, sir.
3 persons I have already removed. CTF Cyber and 2 other funny people.
So yes.
Okay.
We are extremely sorry, sir, from all.
No, it's
Sir, this
okay.
Abdul is also disturbing a lot, sir.
You are amazing.
Yes, sir. They are very naughty, sir.
You are genuinely interested. You are wonderful people. But those who are outsiders who are getting entry, they have made it open, na? This is open learning system. That's why
Yes, sir. This Abdul and Harsh are disturbing from that time.
yeah, there should be some restriction. I told them. Anyway, so he talked about. Did you understand what is intentional fallacy?
Yes.
Intentional
Yes, sir.
fallacy is that fallacy when
Yes.
the reader or the critic tries to find out the intention of the author. Rather, W.K. Wimsatt says कि instead of looking for the intention of the author, you should look for the meaning of the words used in the poem. So you should be interested to know about the meaning of the language used in the poem, not the intention of the author. Okay. Then he said, the meaning of a poem is not what the author meant to say, but what the words actually present. He further said, literature, the evaluation of literature should be done on the basis of the text itself, not the external documents like letters, diaries, authorial statements, etc. Along with intentional fallacy, he coined another term, along with Munro Botsley, affective fallacy. W.K. Wimsatt criticized the idea of judging a poem by the emotional effect of the reader, how you are affected by the poem. So that is called affective fallacy. So you should never be a victim of intentional fallacy, nor should you be a victim of affective fallacy. What is affective fallacy? Affective fallacy is that fallacy when you are affected by the emotional description of a poem.
Yes.
Okay. Then he pleads that subjective response leads to impressionism and relativism. If you are affected by the emotion of the writer, then it becomes your subjective or impressionistic assessment of the poem, which is never acceptable. It should be universal acceptance. It should be, common to all. Focus must remain on the poem's internal structure, not the individual feelings. So Imsat says the reader should focus on the internal structure of the poem. Instead of talking about the internal feelings or individual feelings of the writer, the reader should confine himself to the meaning of the words used in the poem. Then he talked about, the verbal icon. According to W.K. Wimsatt, every literary work, maybe a poem, maybe a drama, maybe a novel, anything, is a verbal icon. ICON. Every literary work, according to W.K. Wimsatt, is a verbal icon, and it is carefully crafted object which contains the unity. It has a unity. Every poem has a unity, and the meaning can be discovered while making a close reading of the poem. You make a minute study of the poem, you make a close examination of the poem, you will be in a position to understand the meaning of the poem. Then he says, poetry communicates through certain images. What kind of images? such type of images which contain universal truths. The poet gives such type of images which are applicable commonly to everyone, and everyone is able to understand the significance of that image. So he says the poet used to give concrete images which describe the universal truth. Thus, literature is not abstract philosophy, but it is an experience crystallized in language. So, according to Imsat, literature is not the abstract philosophy. Literature is not something abstract, but it is concrete. And through that concrete experience, man, tries to reveal or indicate his feelings. Ramdev Baba. Who is this Ramdev Baba?
वो एक रीजन मालूम है पर वो पूछ रहा उसको मैं क्यों कर रहा अभी आ सकता नहीं वहां से देखो ಹಂಗವಾರು ಮಜಾ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಕಾಲ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಇನ್ನೇ ನಾಳೆ ಬರಂಗಿಲ್ಲ ಪಕ್ಕ ಒಟ್ಟ ಮನ್ಯಾಗ ಬಂದು ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡೋ
So, these new critics, they focus on the pattern, the paradox, irony, satire, ambiguity, objective correlative, syntax, structure, and analysis of the text. Then, the objective. The objective of new criticism is to motivate the readers to make a close reading of the text instead of wasting their energy on studying the biography, studying the history. They should examine the style, the structure, the syntax, the semantics, the irony, the ambiguity, the paradox, the image, the simile, the metaphor used in the poem. And they also said there should be practical criticism of the poem. They should study the intention of the poem, and the concepts of W.K. Imsat became foundational principle of new criticism in the mid-20th century. He was an American critic, and he wanted to establish the rigorous method of textual analysis. He said the textual analysis should be rigorous. It should not be superficial, rather it should be rigorous. There should be exclusion of the author, and the reader should never talk about the author. Reader should talk about the text. Historical and political, cultural context to be avoided, and this method was propounded by the new critics. Now let's switch over to Clint Brooks. Clint Brooks was born in the year 1906. He died in 1994. He was equally an American literary critic and the co-founder of a very paramount figure, very important figure in the new criticism, in the domain of new criticism. His work shaped the way literature is supposed to be written. He shaped poetry properly, and he tendered some suggestions, gave some suggestions how poetry should be studied. Like Richard's Livy, Ilias,
مسيطرة بمشي مسطرة خليك لو شفت في شارع بنت تبص لورا انا كده بشرب شايف عصافير ودماغي بتعمل بام 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 ايدك شمال كده اوه في حكاية.
his work shaped the way literature should be studied, and he also advocated that there should be close reading of the text. Text should be read with all seriousness, and along with John Crow Ransom, Alan Tate, Robert Penn Warren, Clint Brooks was a chief proponent of new criticism. And this new criticism, as you know, it emphasized the need for the close reading of the text. For Clint Brooks, a poem is not a historical or biographical document. He has made it clear. Yes, Sudeep, what happened?
Sir, just wanted to ask, sir, with a lot of critics like this, sir, does the poem will lose its essence, right? Because
Huh?
he will like, with a lot of critics like this, don't you think that the poem will lose its essence because a lot of people will fabricate it, like the poets will fabricate it, just like movies, the people fabricate it so that readers start liking it. Don't you think the real essence of the poem will be lost?
Real essence of the poem?
Like a poet will try to fabricate his poem just because
Huh?
his readers start liking it, they find interesting, they find it attractive. Don't you think that the poem will lose its essence just like
No,
a movie,
no.
sir?
Look,
Yeah.
let me make it clear.
Mhm.
Whatever may be said, anything about the theme of the poem, a poem always is not based on realism. It
Okay.
is based on imagination as well as realism. Every literature is a blending between realism and fantasy or imagination and reason.
Okay.
So, a poet, if he wants to fabricate, let him fabricate as long as it appeals to the readers, nobody
Mhm.
minds. And the reader can understand whether it is real or fabricated, genuine or fake. So, that doesn't matter. What
Yeah.
matters is you don't have to bother about the author. The author may be your friend.
Mhm.
You know that this is the poem of my friend, but
Yes.
you don't talk about his character, his
Mhm.
nature, his behavior, his conduct, his approach, his attitude. What
Yes.
you are bothered is what he has written.
Mhm.
Say, for
Yes.
example, he has described a natural scenery, so you will focus on the natural scenery.
Yes, sir.
That is it. That is what new critics are telling.
Okay.
New critics are telling you have to consider that the author is nobody, author
Mhm.
is persona non grata, author is dead after the poem is written.
Okay.
So you have to study the poetry itself in isolation. That's what he is telling. Okay.
Okay. Understood, sir.
Okay. So I mean, this is Clint Brooks said, okay, there should be close reading of the text, and the historical and biographical perspective should always be avoided. Then he has certain ideas. He has written a book called The Oil Wrought Urn. In 1947, he wrote a book, namely The Oil Wrought Urn. There he talked about the heresy of paraphrase. He argued that the meaning of a poem cannot be reduced to a paraphrase statement. A poem's meaning lies in its form and tension, in the way words, images, and rhythms interact. What is paraphrase? Just take out the meaning. So Brooks says you need not just take out the meaning, but you have to study deeper into the description. And if you just take out the meaning, there is heresy of paraphrase. So he criticizes it. He says that a poem's meaning doesn't lie a poem's meaning doesn't lie in just the meaning of the word, but it lies in its form, it lies in its tension, it lies in the way words, images, and rhythms interact with each other, a harmonious relationship between word, rhythm, syntax, semantics, structure, irony, satire, etc. So there is a unity through paradox and irony. He believed that paradox is the language of poetry. For example, let us take John Donne. John Donne used metaphysical concepts. Shakespeare also used paradoxical statements in his poetry to express the complexity of human experience. Similarly, irony is a key structural principle. Irony is also used in poetry. So there is organic unity. A good poem always tries to forge unity not by simplifying but by reconciling contradictions within a single structure. So a poem is a well wrought organ when all its elements, such as form, imagery, rhythm, tone, are organically related, harmoniously related. In other words, Clint Brooks says, in poetry, the writer should have made efforts to bring about a harmony, to bring about an organic relationship among various aspects such as form, imagery, rhythm, tone. All those aspects should have been organically related so that there is no disharmony. He has written books like Understanding Poetry, which was produced in 1938. It was a landmark in literary criticism. And this book, Understanding Poetry, taught the readers or the students how to read poems as self-contained aesthetic wholes. He wrote it with Warren, R.P. Warren. Then his book, The Well-Wrought Organ, the most influential work, with wonderful essays on John Donne, John Keats, W.B. Yeats, T.S. Eliot, and others, which elaborated the paradox and the organic unity to be maintained in poetry. So he had great influence in neo-criticism. He was a renowned critic, and he talked about the organic unity which is expected in poetry, and every reader or every writer should try to bring about the organic unity among various aspects such as the form, the tone, the tenor, the structure, the metaphor, and other things, so that the reader gets something which is self-contained. And according to him, a poem is a self-contained aesthetic whole. You never find a poem to be disorganized or in disharmony. Rather, it is very much harmonious. There is form, there is imagery, there is rhythm, there is tone. Everything is well organized. Paradox is also available. It is the language of poetry, because paradox is found in the poets like John Donne, Shakespeare, etc. Paradox is part of poetic process. So this is how Clint Brooks, along with saying that there should be close reading of the text, he also made several revelations, several descriptions on different aspects. And for him, the poem is a well-wrought organ, because a poem has organic unity. Remember, Clint Brooks said a poem has organic unity, unity among the form, the structure, the tone, the intonation, the rhythm, the language, the syntax, the semantics, the irony, the satire, the paradox, the allegory, everything is settled in an organic manner.
Yes, sir.
So this is how he has talked about, the organic unity of poetry. Then we'll switch over to John Crow Ransom. Is another, new critic who contributed immensely in a remarkable manner to enrich the domain of new criticism. John Crow Ransom was a major figure, a remarkable figure in 20th century Anglo-American criticism. He's a poet. He was a poet and he was one of the key architects of new criticism. His criticism marked by precision, textual fidelity, and resistance to moralistic and historical distractions in literary study. He is often described as the founder of new criticism. He has made outstanding contributions to the domain of new criticism. John Crow Ransom was born in 1888 and he died in 1974. He was a renowned poet as well as a critic. He is one of the key architects of new criticism. His criticism is marked by precision and textual fidelity. He also emphasized that there should be close reading of the text. He had written an influential essay called The New Criticism. And do you know the name of this theory, New Criticism, has evolved from John Crow Ransom. John Crow Ransom is the person who has given the name New Criticism to this theory. And he had written an essay collection of essays named The New Criticism. It was published in 1941, and this movement, the movement of new criticism or the theory of new criticism, it owes its origin to John Crow Ransom. The New Criticism collection of essays was published in 1941, and the literary theory New Criticism got its name from John Crow Ransom. He argued for, like others, like Richards, Eliot, Cleon Brooks, F.R. Lewis, W.K. Wimsatt, Monroe Beardsley, he also argued that there should be close reading of the text, and every text has an autonomous autotelic entity. You can't ignore the text and you can't focus on the writer. Rather, he suggested that the writer should be sidelined, the text should be highlighted. What should be highlighted in the text? Same thing, the form, the texture, the structure, the language, the objective correlative, the images, the metaphors, the similes, the paradoxes, the allegories, the syntax, everything should be closely studied. So he argued for close reading of the text and the autonomy of the text. He said that the text is not dependent on the writer. Text is not dependent on the writer. Rather, the text has its autonomy. The text is autonomous, text is autotelic, and it should not be dependent or subordinate to the writer. Text is very important.
Hello.
Yes?
So this guy is very irritating. Santaka Open.
Okay. Now the guy is gone.
Okay.
Yeah. So he said there should be close reading of the text and one should look into the autonomous entity of the text, because every text has an autonomous entity. You can't discount, you can't ignore the free entity or the autonomy of the text. Now, John Crow Ransom talked about certain critical principles. He wanted to analyze the text from its ontological aspect. What is the ontological aspect? He said a poem is not just an expression, but it is a crafted, self-contained structure. Ontology means existence. So he wanted to look into or verify the existence of the poem. How did the poem emerge? He believed that a poem is not just an expression, but it is a crafted, self-contained structure. In his book, Criticism, Inc., published in 1937, it is not a book, it is an essay. He said that criticism should become a precise discipline. Criticism is not a simple thing or an ordinary thing. It has a scientific structure. It focuses strictly on the text, and there is a balance of the structure and texture. In every poetry or in every poem, there is a balance which is maintained between the structure and the texture. What does he want the structure to be? He wanted that the structure should be logical, the structure of the poem should be narrative, the structure of the poem should be intellectual, the structure of the poem should be organic, there should be a harmonious relation, there should be organic unity, and the texture should be containing the imagery, the diction, the sound, the rhythm, and every great poetry contains the organic structure. Organic unity is the symptom or the syndrome or the salient feature of great poet. Like Clare Brooks, John Crow Ransom also rejected paraphrase. He also supported heresy of paraphrase. Ransom maintained that meaning of the poetry cannot be reduced to a prose statement. You cannot be satisfied just by making the paraphrase of a poem. Rather, you should make the analysis from different angles. What images are used, whether irony is used or not, whether understatement is given or not, whether objective correlative is given or not. Instead of doing this, you cannot be satisfied just by making the paraphrase. So he outrightly rejected that paraphrase should be discouraged. And Ransom said the meaning of poetry cannot be reduced to a prose statement because poetry is very precious. Poetry is very valuable and it should not be confined to prose statement. John Crow Ransom, like all other compeers, friends, peers like T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, F.R. Leavish, Ian Brooks, W.K. Wimsatt, he also said that there should be close reading of the text. There is no substitute for the close reading of the text. Close reading of the text is very, very important. Ransom said the approach should not be impressionistic. In other words, the reader should not suffer from affective fallacy. He should not be influenced by the emotional effect of the description in the poem. On the other hand, he should be very objective in his assessment. He should be very impersonal in his assessment. He should be very dispassionate in his assessment. While making the analysis, reception, interpretation, and evaluation of a poem, the reader should never be influenced by any external force. He should never be influenced by any kind of external force. Rather, he should confine himself to the text only, the analysis of the text only. He should avoid impressionism and he should avoid extrinsic approach. Extrinsic approach depends on the analysis of biography, the analysis of historical context. So he should desist from all these things. Ransom wanted that criticism should be more professional. Criticism should never be taken lightly. It should never be based on personal assessment. Rather, it should be based on professional attitude. It should be impartial, unbiased, unprejudiced, detached, and it should be studied like science. In other words, there should be a methodical approach to the study of poetry. There should be a scientific approach to the study of poetry. So he insisted that criticism should be more objective, more detached, more impartial, more professional, more impersonal, and the attitude of the critic or the reader should be methodical and scientific. He should never be carried away by emotion, and he should also make sure that the author doesn't come to the picture. Ransom wanted to make the practice of close reading of the text very popular among the readers. He always emphasized on the autonomy and integrity of the literary work. He said, if the literary work has autonomy, the literary work has the integrity. And he also helped to make criticism professional in universities and in other academic institutions. He was John Crow Ransom was the mentor, was the editor, and he founded the Kenyan Review in 1939. He had influenced critics like Leon Brooks, Alan Tate, Robert Penn Warren. He is remembered as the foundational theorist of New Criticism. And it is he who gave the concept of New Criticism, and according to his essay, New Criticism was named. The theory of New Criticism was named after uh, John Crow Ransom's essay, New Criticism. So we have seen how John Crow Ransom has made, outstanding contributions to the domain of criticism by talking about the close reading of the text and by talking about the heresy of paraphrase, by talking about the integrity and autonomy of the text, and how Eliot equally made contributions, and the three pioneers I told you who started the who started the theory of neo-criticism, who started laying the foundation stone for the theory of neo-criticism are Eliot, Richards, and Levis. So Eliot is very famous because he opposed the romantic emphasis on personal emotion. The romantic critics, they were very subjective. Try to differentiate between romantic criticism and new criticism. Romantic criticism put emphasis on personal emotion, subjective experience. But new criticism put emphasis on objective experience and impersonal attitude. And Eliot always discouraged the autobiographical expression in poetry. But remember the romantic critics like Wordsworth and Coleridge. What did they do? The romantic critics talked about subjective experience. The romantic critics talked about emotion recollected in tranquility. So they talked about the personal emotion. But T.S. Eliot did never encourage personal emotion. He always wanted it should be universal emotion, it should be objective, it should be impartial, it should be, dispassionate, it should be detached. He has written a wonderful essay, as I told you, The Tradition and Individual Talent in 1919, in which he strongly pleaded in favor of impersonality of poetry. Personality of the poet should never be reflected in poetry. In other words, a poet should never talk about his own personal likes and dislikes, his own, joys and jubilance, his own issues, his own agonies, etc. Rather, he should highlight such issues which are common, which are universal to everybody. So the Tradition and Individual Talent, which was written in 1919, was a path-breaking essay, mind-blowing essay, which focused on the impersonality theory of poetry. Poetry, according to Eliot, should not be a direct expression of the poet's feelings, but Eliot said that poetry should be a transformation of emotions into art through objective correlative. Eliot also championed, popularized objective correlative. Eliot also maintained that a poet, instead of expressing his emotion directly, he should express his emotion through objective correlatives. And these objective correlatives shall act as a formula to that emotion. Then he said, okay, the new critical focus on the poem began to become popular in the middle part of 20th century. Started with early 20th century and became very popular in the middle part of 20th century. And the new critics used to consider poetry as an autonomous entity, as an autotelic entity, containing autonomy, containing integrity. So the feelings of the poets should be transformed into art. Eliot introduced the concept of objective correlative, as I told you, a set of objects, situation, or chain of events that evoke a particular emotion in a reader, and they serve as a hallmark to express that emotion, formula to express that emotion. So this instrument or tool has shifted the attention from the poet's inner world to the text itself. So if you focus on the objective correlative, you will be definitely distancing yourself from the poet's personal view, poet's inner view, poet's subjective view to the text itself, which is universal. It will also shift your attention to the structure itself, to the different images, to the form, to the language, to the syntax. So all those things will come into focus. It also emphasized that meaning is created by the organic unity of the poem. Cleanth Brooks talked about the organic unity. John Crow Ransom supported the view of Cleanth Brooks in respect of organic unity. He also said every poem has the organic unity, has a typical harmony, and it has internal unity. The poetry or a poem or a poet or a reader should not take help of any external reference. Rather, everything is available inside the poem. So he should totally focus on the internal unity of the poem. Apart from that, Eliot also highlighted another point. He said, the form and content in poetry are inseparable. What is form? What is content? Form is the structure, the formal structure, the technique that is being adopted. For example, whether you are writing a lyric, whether you are writing a sonnet, whether you are writing an epic, whether you are writing a ballad, whether you are writing an ode. So that depends on the form, what kind of form you are going to adopt. So the unity of form and content. Then comes the content. Content means the subject matter. What kind of form you are adopting, what kind of structure you are adopting, and what kind of subject you are going to deal with. What would be your subject? Then Eliot said that form and content both are very integral relationship, organic relationship, and both the parts are inseparable from each other. The meaning of a poem and its form are one. The form is embedded, or the meaning is embedded in the form. The meaning is to be discovered in the form. So the form and the content, they are inseparable. All the neo-critics, all the members of the neo-criticism group or neo-criticism theory, they adopted this principle and they wanted to analyze the text and find out the organic unity. They not only began to analyze the text, they also wanted to discover, unravel the structure of the poem. What structure? The united structure of the poem, the autonomous structure of the poem, the organic unity of the poem, where they found or they find imagery, rhythm, and structure. Imagery, simile, metaphor, irony, satire, paradox, allegory, rhythm, and structure. All together, they contribute to bring about the meaning of the poem. So Eliot himself talked about the close reading of the text. And Ian Brooks and W.K. Wimsatt in their essays, they talked in detail how close reading of the text can be brought about, can be achieved. Eliot made the study of metaphysical poets like Donne, made the study of Shakespearean play Hamlet, and there he talked about the importance of careful analysis of the textual elements. He said Hamlet is an artistic failure. Eliot said Hamlet is an artistic failure. Eliot also said that Hamlet is the Mona Lisa of literature. What is the Mona Lisa of literature? Who is Mona Lisa? Who can say? Who is Mona Lisa?
She's a painting.
Huh? Painting, yeah. Who painted it?
Which one is it? Michelangelo or Da Vinci?
Leonardo da Vinci.
Huh?
Da Vinci, I think.
Leonardo da Vinci, Italian painter. Italian painter Leonardo da Vinci had painted the figure of Mona Lisa, and the smile of Mona Lisa was really mind-boggling and beguiling. From one side of the smile you find it is a happy romantic smile. From the other side you find it is a mysterious smile. From the other side you find the smile indicates pathos and sadness. That is very intriguing smile. That is why it is said the smile of Mona Lisa is intriguing. You can't exactly understand from which angle you see, and from different angles it expresses different things, for which Eliot described Hamlet as the Mona Lisa of literature. He said Hamlet has so much of depth, so much of intensity, and so many dimensions and angles of analysis that one simply cannot afford to analyze it from one angle. It has multiple angles, and from multiple angles, multiple meanings will emerge. When multiple meanings will emerge, people will be, not in a position to find out a single meaning. Say, for example, why did Hamlet make delay to take revenge against the murderer of his father, who is his uncle named Claudius? If you are trying to solve this problem, this is not a simple problem. It is a riddle, it is a puzzle, it is a conundrum. Because the critics used to be surprised. Okay, why did Hamlet make delay? The ghost of his father at the dead of the night called Hamlet and said, "Hey, look, I am going to make some startling revelation. If you have patience and courage, please listen to it. And being my worthy son, I would expect you to take revenge." He said, "Okay, I would like to listen." Then he started narrating, "I am your father's spirit. My soul is not salvaged." In Christianity also, the salvation of soul system is there. In our Hinduism, in Indian philosophy or Indian scriptures, we talk about the salvation of the soul or the moksha. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Okay. So they also, in the Christianity, in the Western countries, they believe in the salvation of the soul. So the father of Hamlet, King Hamlet, his name is also Hamlet. He said, "Look, son, my soul is still hovering around like an orbitless planet because I have not been salvaged. And do you know why my soul has not been salvaged? Because I have been murdered in cold blood." Whatever narrative is being given, I was stung by a venomous serpent, is a blatant and brazen lie. I was never stung by a serpent. Rather, after having lunch, I was taking my siesta in the garden as usual, like every day, and there your uncle came with some poisonous potion in his hand, and he poured those poisonous potion into my ears. After it was poured into my ears, my entire body had the eruptions on my skin, and those eruptions developed into leprosy like condition, and that brought about my death. So it was a cold, calculated, planned murder engineered by your uncle Claudius. He had two intentions behind the murder. He had an eye on my wife, Gertrude, and he had an eye on my throne, on the throne of Denmark. He murdered me, married my wife, and occupied the throne of Denmark. If you are my worthy son, I am sure you would definitely try to take revenge against my murderer. But at that time he said, "You should take the revenge against the murderer, that is your uncle, but you should spare your mother." From this you can imagine how deeply in love was Hamlet with his wife Gertrude. Because Hamlet doesn't have any clue to know that Gertrude was an accomplice to this kind of murder. So He wanted that his wife should be spared. Hamlet should not take action against his mother. So after that, Hamlet was thinking about, he was on the horns of dilemma. That is the reason why he made the delay in taking action. Why? Because you should know, out of the four important tragic heroes of Shakespeare, who are the four important tragic heroes? Hamlet, Othello, Macbeth, and King Lear. Out of these four tragic heroes, Hamlet is supposed to be the most erudite, wise, scholarly, philosophical, thinking character. He is very judicious, he is very wise, very erudite, and he is loved by the people of Denmark very much. His father he was loved by the people of Denmark. He is also loved by the people of Denmark. So he thought whatever revelation was made by the ghost, it may be misleading. So such type of revelation could be misleading. Who knows? That might be an evil spirit. That ghost might not be the ghost of my father. That might be an evil spirit which might be trying to misguide me, to mislead me. So he waited for the opportunity and he waited to collect the evidence, collect the testimonial, collect proper proof that his uncle had murdered his father. So he began to bid time and he waited for the appropriate opportunity. And people used to say the second reason for his delay was he thought, if at all I contemplate revenge, if at all I propose to take revenge against Claudius, what are the resources with me? I am just a prince. And Claudius is holding all the resources, all the weaponry, cavalry, infantry, everything is under his control. Should I attack him? He will counterattack and he will make a mincemeat of me because I don't have the resources. So he waited, consulted his friend Horatio. Horatio also opined in the similar manner. And critics used to subscribe another factor. Hamlet was a victim of Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex, a critic like Ernest Jones, he said, Hamlet is a victim of Oedipus complex. In his unconscious mind, he had a kind of sexual desire towards his voluptuous mother Gertrude. And he used to be very hostile towards his father. Many a time he has desired to kill his father, which he has not done. Now that his father is killed by Claudius and his mother is enjoyed physically by Claudius, he gets vicarious pleasure, indirect pleasure, and he allows this to continue, for which he makes delay. He got an opportunity to kill Claudius when Claudius was at his prayer. At that time, Hamlet thought to himself, he said, Shall I kill him now? Shall I not kill him? If I kill him now, his soul will directly reach heaven because he is praying to God. And should I pave the way for the murderer of my father to go to heaven directly? And he desisted from killing him. Then he waited for the opportunity. So, in the process of waiting, what happened? 7 lives were lost. Finally, he himself lost his life. So, his tragic downfall was brought about due to his own tragic flaw of indecision and dilatoriness. He made inordinate delay to take revenge, and he was not able to decide what to do. That is why it is said, to be or not to be, that is the question. After hearing about the revelation of his father's murder from his father's ghost, he was not able to decide what to do and what not to do. That is why it is said, to be or not to be, that is the question. Hamlet was not able to decide whether to take revenge or not to take revenge. If at all he has to take revenge, what time he should take revenge? What is the opportune time? What is the appropriate time? What is the advantageous time? And when should he take his revenge? So, this is how Shakespeare said, in Hamlet, it is an artistic failure and there is no use of objective correlative in Hamlet, for which he considers the play Hamlet as an artistic failure. And he also calls Hamlet as the Mona Lisa of literature because the interpretation of Hamlet can be made from several angles. If it is open to several angles of interpretation, so naturally it will be the Mona Lisa of literature. Then Eliot emphasized the role of tradition in shaping literature. He warned against reducing literature to historical context or author's intention. In his essay, Tradition and Individual Talent, he totally doesn't dismiss the importance of history. Rather, he says that tradition has a great role to shape the literature. What tradition? The literary tradition, the writing skill, the poetic vision. In other words, the writer or the poet who is writing at present should have knowledge about the writings of his predecessors. He should have adequately studied the literary works of his predecessors, for which it will enrich his experience. It will widen the horizon of his creative landscape, and he will be able to learn something from his predecessors. So he said, tradition plays a vital role to shape the creative talent of a writer. And he also gave warning against using historical context or the intention of the author while appreciating a poem or while analyzing a poem. Historical perspective, authorial intention should never be taken into consideration while making analysis of a poem. In his essay, Tradition and Individual Talent, Eliot said that every great work of art exists within a simultaneous order of tradition. If you are going to produce a great work, it is definitely a byproduct of tradition. You have definitely enriched yourself by taking inspiration from the tradition. And Eliot called it the simultaneous order of tradition. Every great work is the byproduct of the simultaneous order of tradition. While new critics were less concerned with the tradition, they observed Eliot's idea. They appreciated the idea of Eliot that the essence of a poem or the value of a poem is measured by its relation to the literary system, not the poet's personality. The value of a poem is measured by its relation to a literary system, but not the poet's personality. In his poems like The Wasteland, Four Quartets, Eliot in his own poetry exemplified the dense allusiveness, the structural unity, and the theory of impersonality that the new critics admired and often used it as a test case for their theories. Eliot is famous for two of his famous poems. One is The Wasteland and the other is Four Quartets. There, Eliot made experiments with allusion, paradox, irony, images, metaphors, etc. He made an attempt to achieve the structural unity, and he also made efforts to bring about the element of impersonality. In both the poems, you will never find he has used about his own subjective experience. He has always been very objective. In his poems, he has also tried to achieve structural unity, organic unity, and that provides a scope to the readers to make a close reading of the text. The close reading of the text is possible only when the text is open-ended, the text is objective, the text doesn't have any authorial intention, there is no reflection of author's intent, author's purpose, there is no description of author's personality. The reader should desist from making any biographical or historical analysis. Then only his analysis of the text will be very objective and it will be very dispassionate and impartial, unprejudiced. There won't be any prejudice at all. On the contrary, if you know the name of the author and the author happens to be a friend of yours, or the author happens to be your favorite person, and in case you are reading his poem, whatever he has written, you will give a recommendation, you will give a laudatory note, you will praise it. Even if he has not written well, you will appreciate it because he happens to be your friend. So, the new critic suggested that author should not come into the context at the time of reading the poem, because the poem is autotelic. Poet has its own autonomous entity. Poem has its autonomous existence. Why should it be subordinate to the author? The author may be there, but we should not take him into consideration. And the critic should feel that once the literary work is completed, the author is dead and author should not come into picture. The new critics always emphasized that the text should be read minutely, closely, thoroughly, vigorously, seriously. And the form, the texture, the structure, the language, the syntax, the images, the simile, the metaphor, the paradox, the allegory, the allusion should be highlighted, should be discussed properly so that there is no confusion and the text comes out properly to the mind of the reader and the reader gets an insight into the real essence of the text. So Eliot talked about so many things. As I told you, Eliot talked about the close reading of the text. Eliot talked about the theory of impersonality in poetry. Eliot talked about the role of tradition in poetry. Eliot talked about the importance of objective correlative. Eliot talked about the organic unity in poetry. Eliot talked about the textual analysis, and his analysis or his exposure, his views gave a kind of philosophical foundation to new criticism. The philosophical dimension of new criticism was built up by the great T.S. Eliot. So T.S. Eliot is famous and his outstanding contribution shall be remembered as far as his theory of impersonality is concerned, the role of tradition is concerned, the element of objectivity is concerned, the close reading of the text is concerned, the organic unity is concerned, the importance to objective correlative is concerned. So all those things need to be discussed threadbare as far as analysis of poetry is concerned. That is what Eliot talked about. So we have new criticism, especially we have studied the great figures, great pioneers of new criticism. They are T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, F.R. Lewis, W.K. Wimsatt, Cleanth Brooks, John Crow Ransom, W.K. Wimsatt, etc. So there we have completed the field of new criticism. Thank you very much. We will stop it today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
sir.